Do you have to be broke and miserable to be a real artist? Today we're going to talk about the myth of the starving artist. Is this something we should be aspiring for, or is this just a hurtful stereotype that holds us back? My name is Rob Guillory. I am a comic book artist, and the purpose of this channel is to encourage, inspire, and I hope give insight into the strange world of comics. Let's get into it. What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in for another episode. I appreciate it. Today, I want to deal with something that I think most artists are going to run into at some point. It is the stereotype of the starving artist. Now, if you've lived in America, or really most places, if you've lived anywhere, you know that there is a picture of what an artist looks like. And the artist is typically the guy who is starving. He's a little crazy. He is not balanced in any way, and he's possibly even chopping off body parts. That is the stereotype of the starving artist in America. It's the guy who basically can't earn a living with his art. He's possibly supported by his parents, that sort of thing. And I didn't think that had any effect on me. But then at some point early in my career, when I actually started having some level of success, I started realizing there was an incredible amount of angst that I had, particularly about making money and being successful and actually starting to be happy. And I started realizing that I had swallowed a few lies of that, starving artist stereotype. And I didn't, I guess in hindsight, it made sense. I started kind of picking apart where that might have come from. And I realized that culturally, I'm hit over the head. We're all hit over the head with this kind of stereotype all the time. Plus, on top of that, it didn't help that I grew up in a town. I'm in Louisiana. I didn't know any working artists that were actually doing this. So I didn't have a good picture of what it looked like. And even the folks who kind of were supposed to be the ones who give me the picture of what a working artist looked like, the professors at my university, none of them were really working artists. Most of them were just tenured professors who made art on the side. And in 5 years of college, we only talked about actually earning a living and paying your bills one time. And it was for 1 hour in my final semester of college. And that was it. We didn't talk about we didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about business. We didn't talk about any of those things except for that 1 hour, which is insane in hindsight. The second I got out into the real world and started actually making money and having to pay taxes, having to pay for insurance, having to think about cash flow and things like that, I realized how insane it was that I only had 1 hour of actual training on this stuff. So today, what I would like to do is go through, because you guys know I like making lists. I like looking at my thoughts, and I like trying to unpack where they originated. Are they true? And if they're not true, I would like to sort of speak truth to it, flip it, and change the mindset so I can be more fruitful and ultimately be more productive. So I'm going to dive right into that. The first lie is sort of it's an insidious one we've all heard a million different times. It is a cultural lie that we all hear. And I think it's important, not just for artists, but anyone who is relating to the matter of money. Money is a delicate subject pretty much in any circle, but especially in art circles. We don't like talking about money. We would like to pretend that we as artists are sort of these pure vessels who just make art, and we don't have to think about material things like money. That's just not true. If you are an artist trying to make a living and pay your bills with your art, you are an artist and a business person at the same time. That is just the truth. So, but this lie in particular is that money is the root of all evil. And we've all heard this a million different times. And it comes from everywhere. I've heard, what's ironic about this one in particular is that this is actually accredited to a scripture from the Bible. But the thing is, the people who I've heard say this verse the most tend to be people who hate the Bible. They tend to be like, this is the atheist's favorite quote, money is the root of all evil. And what it's meant to imply is that money is basically radioactive, that money is a corrupting agent that will make you a bad person. And that if you have too much of it, you might become a supervillain, essentially. So that's sort of the thread. That's what we're in. That's what we are hit over the head with a million different times. The truth of the matter is that the quote is actually kind of taken out of context. There's actually more to the quote. The actual quote from Scripture is, The love of money is the root of all evil. That completely changes that statement. That basically shows us that the issue is not necessarily money, that money itself is a tool, like a hammer, like anything else. It is a tool. The problem is when it is our heart disposition toward money. When we look at money not as a tool to be used, when we start looking at money as actually an idol, as a god, as something that we put at the center of our lives, it is the thing we are pursuing the most, that, and then all the people around it in your life become sort of tools that you use to get money. When you no longer use money and love people, but rather you love money and use people, that is the unhealthy balance. So that is the correct context of that. So right away, I had to correct that in my own thinking, because I had kind of taken in some of this, that idea that money is innately bad. And, though I need it to live, I shouldn't want it. I don't want too much of it because I don't want to become a bad person. So as a business owner, if you are a business owner, if you are selling anything, you are actually trying to get money to pay for your life, to fund your business, to keep your art going. And that's okay. So we shouldn't feel bad about that. So right away, that's, I think, at the very core of a lot of this starving artist paradigm. It's one of the things that I think is really unhealthy for all of us. And this doesn't even just apply just to artists. I think it also applies to business owners in general, or anyone who has to deal with finances. I think having a proper view of money and finance and what it actually is a core issue we have got to get straight, or else we're going to be a wreck. So lie number 2 is that I want to make just enough money, but not too much. Now, this is something I hear a lot from creatives. A lot of creatives, and it comes from a good place. I have said this before at some point. The idea is that I don't want to come off as greedy. I want to appear, generous. I want to appear as if, again, I'm sort of like this pure vessel who does not have to interact with material things like money. The problem with that is, if you are a business owner, and if you are having these two statements work in your mind at the same time, you're running these two tracks simultaneously, where you, on one hand, you want to be fruitful, you want to have financial gain to keep your business going. Who doesn't want to be financially successful if you're a business owner? Everyone does. But if you have that one track, I want to be successful, but you also at the same time have another track saying, I kind of don't want to be successful. That is a recipe for self-sabotage. And that is something I have absolutely faced in my career as well. I actually started making subconscious business decisions that were actually detrimental to me. And I didn't even know where it was coming from. And then I started unpacking it and realizing that I had some really weird ideas about success and about finances. And I had to unpack that stuff. So right away, that's the lie. That's the thing that we swallow that affects us negatively. At least it affected me negatively. But the actual truth of it is that I do want to thrive. I want to be successful, and that if any person, if you are on Kickstarter and you are promoting your book, you're promoting whatever you're making, you want as many people as possible to buy that thing. If I make a book, I would love 1 million people to show up and buy it. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think it's okay. I think the antidote to this kind of tension is just acknowledging and owning the fact that, yes, I would like to be successful in my projects. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a greedy statement. That's just we all want that. So let's just get rid of the weird, I don't want to be too successful. I think that's just holding us back. I don't think that's healthy. The third one is that I have to be miserable to make good art. Now, we've all heard this before. We've heard this idea, again, the stereotype of the suffering artist, the person who is, again, possibly he is so tortured and tormented that he's actually cutting off body parts to make his art. We've seen this picture over and over again. And, I have to say that I think I swallowed this to a degree. Now, backstory for me, when I first really started pursuing art as a serious vocation, as my serious job, I was in college. And college was a very dark period for me. I was at this weird place where I was coming. I mean, we all are in college, but I was coming from this place of leaving childhood, entering adulthood. And when you make a transition like that, for me at least, I had to unpack a lot of dark things from my past. It was not a pleasant time, but it was during that time that I made the most headway as far as breaking into comics. That was when I was going to conventions, traveling all over the place, actively pursuing it. And that's when I thrived. And I was basically taking all of the negative emotions I had and I was pouring them into the art, which I think it can be healthy. I think that art can absolutely be a positive outlet for negative emotions. The problem for me was at some point, years later, after I'd already broken into comics, I looked around at my life and I realized I was happily married. I had some amazing kids and my career was in a good place. We had money in the bank, our bills were paid. And I found myself strangely angsty. And it actually messed with me with the fact that I was actually happy. And I started realizing that I believed this, that I believed that I had to be suffering for my art. I had to be miserable. And I started being a little afraid of my art becoming worse and becoming weaker because I was no longer drawing from negative emotions. Now, the thing I've had to kind of reconcile is that we as artists, we all suffer. We do suffer, and suffering looks different for everybody. I actually had a conversation with a counselor last year where we were talking about this very thing. And I mentioned that I had this underlying guilt that I wasn't suffering for my art, that my life is relatively peaceful. It's fairly, I have an amazing life. So I felt bad about it. And his reply to me was, he had seen me, we had spoken for a while, and he'd seen me go through the process of making my art. I was writing Farmhand at the time, the last arc of Farmhand. And he had seen me go through the process. He'd seen how miserable I was, that I was laboring with this art, with this story. And it was really taking a toll. It was keeping me up nights. And he looks me in the eye after having seen all this, and he asked a very poignant question. He said, "You don't think you're suffering? Look at you. like, look at you. You're a complete mess. You're absolutely suffering." So we all suffer to some degree for our art. Where I think the problem lies is when we go looking for suffering. We go looking for reasons to kind of make our lives worse. So we have angst and then we make art from the angst. I think that's actually destructive. And I found myself kind of doing some of that. I found myself looking for drama, looking for the negatives in my life, focusing on the negatives, because it was just an old habit. It was something I was comfortable with. I was comfortable making art from the negative. And what I had to learn was you don't have to be miserable to make art, to make meaningful art. You can actually live in a place of joy. You can make art from joy. You can make art from a position of gratitude. I find now that I make a lot of my art from a position of no longer being the 19-year-old kid who's angsty and dealing with all this drama and internal strife. I'm now a 42-year-old man who has an amazing family. I've got a good life. I've been through some things. I've got some scars, and I've been forgiven of many, many things. And out of that kind of life experience, I find now that is where I make my art from. It's from that lived experience. That's where the art comes from now. It doesn't have to come from a negative place. It can actually just come from what I've been through. So that was a pretty major lie I had to break through in my process. So lastly, this is another pretty insidious one that I dealt with. I see artists deal with this all the time. It's this idea of my art isn't valuable. And I hit this again fairly early in my career. The very first time, actually, I'll go back even further. The very first time I had to put a price tag on my art was back in 2004 when I tabled at a convention, a Wizard World convention in Dallas for the very first time. And I got to the convention, and as I'm setting up the table, I started realizing I have to price this stuff. I had some prints for sale. I came up with, people were coming up to me for commissions for the very first time, which was super flattering. But when people asked how much the commissions were, I had no answer because I had never priced my art before. And as a result, my initial commissions were only like $15. It was crazy cheap. I was selling prints for $1. I think from the weekend I walked away with $100 in cash. So the entire weekend was a loss, but it was a great experience nonetheless. But it highlighted the fact that I had a real problem with valuing my art. My art, even back then, was worth more than $15 for the time I was putting into it. And then again, I hit this back in 2009 when my image comic Chew came out. People started emailing me, asking me to buy original art, which is not something I ever considered. I grew up in Louisiana. I wasn't aware of all of the various streams of income that can go along with comics, and I just wasn't paying attention to it. So when people came to me asking to buy my original art, I had no idea how to price this stuff. So I did what probably a lot of guys, actually I know a lot of comic creators do this. I just let my wife price them. She didn't have the issue with pricing my art that I did. She was able to put a fairly objective price. She knew how much time I was putting into it, and she's got a good business brain to begin with. So she's able to price it way better than I could at the time. But it highlighted the fact that I had a hard time pricing my art, and even when I did price my art, I was always too low because ultimately I didn't really value my art. And I see that with a lot of creators. A lot of creators will sell their art at crazy dirt cheap prices because they just don't value it. And I would encourage you, if you've dealt with that, I think you should definitely value your art probably more than you do at the moment, because that's where I was. So I think the good baseline for valuing your art and knowing how to price your art would be to look at the time you put in and price it proportionally to the time that you put in. So nowadays, if I price my art, I have more of a precedent now after having done it for so long, but at the very least, I'm considering how much time I put into it. So, but this value thing is a really sticky one, especially in today's economy. It's just tricky. So, but again, value your art. It is valuable. Do not underprice your art. So at the end of the day, I think overall, the myth of the starving artist is exactly that. It is a myth, and it is a harmful one. I think that it keeps us back. I think it basically creates a perfect scenario, perfect environment for us to kind of ruin our lives. Really. I mean, it's all of these things, they affect how we look at money. They affect how we look at our relationships, how we live our lives. And we as artists, and this goes for lots of other industries as well, but in this case, I'm speaking directly to creators. I think that we have to separate ourselves from it because it doesn't help us. I've never seen the starving artist paradigm. Any of these kind of lies I've gone through, I've never seen them bear good fruit in any creator. And every creator I've seen that has thrived has separated themselves from this, myself included. The second I started changing how I looked at money, the second I started looking at reestablishing kind of my beliefs about how I could interact in the world, that I actually could be joyful. I didn't have to be this angsty, suffering artist. The second I embraced that, my life got a lot better and my art got better, frankly. So I think this is something we need to break through. So my encouragement to you is just to, as always, be thoughtful about this stuff. As I always do, I would encourage you to write down your thoughts, write down exactly what you believe about these things. Are there any of these 4 lies I've written down that I've went over today? Do any of them apply to you? Do they resonate with you? And if they do, write that down and start to unpack exactly why that is. Again, this is a simple exercise, but I think there is something powerful about stopping and thinking about why we believe what we believe. I think a lot of people nowadays don't really do that, and that's why we have the internet. The internet is basically full of people who are just kind of impulsively doing things. So stop, write this stuff down. What do you believe about these things? What do you believe about finances? What do you believe about being an artist? And do you believe that you have to suffer for your art? And do you believe that you're not a good artist, a real artist, if you are healthy, if you're prosperous in any way, if you're actually happy in your life? Do you look for strife to fuel the art? These are things we need to consider. So Let me know what's going on with you guys. I hope this is helpful to you. But let me know down in the comments, where are you with this stuff? You know, are there places that you are facing this in your own journey as an artist? I'd love to help any way I can. Hit me in the comments. Let me know what's up with you. Like, share, subscribe, all that standard YouTube-y stuff. I will check you guys next week. I hope that this coming week is fruitful. I hope that it's peaceful. I hope that it's very productive. I'll check you then. Bye.